Welcome everyone to a special Thursday posted lecture. So I realized I was a bit behind on my lectures, so I'm going to make sure that they're all posted before class on Friday. And just be sure that you guys get through them and let me know if you have any questions, I guess before the midterm. So let's get into it. So today we're going to talk about the gut microbiome and depression. So this is also called the gut-brain axis. So the first thing we're going to want to talk about is what is the gut microbiome. So the gut microbiome is really talking about the bacterial cells that live in the human gut. So numerically, the human body carries just as many bacterial cells as it does human cells. Oftentimes, it's quoted as 10 bacteria to 1 human cell. That's wrong. That was a highly unspecific estimate, which was put forward in the 70s. A more accurate estimate puts the value closer to a 1-to-1 ratio, and sometimes less, because every time you take a poop, you shed several trillion bacterial cells. Fun fact. Yeah, tell that to your friends. So sometimes you actually do have more human cells than bacterial cells. But don't worry, the bacteria, they grow back. So the vast majority of the bacteria are commensal. Totally saying that wrong, my bad. But they inhibit the gastrointestinal tract. So these microbiomes, they are good for us. They're not bad bacteria, they're good bacteria, mostly. That's why there's some products out there that say they help with your gut bacteria, I guess. I don't know, like Activia. I don't know. They have weird commercials. But yeah, it is actually very important for gut health. So the microbiome is increasingly recognized for its contributions to health and numerous diverse diseases. There's some studies that estimate 90% of human health conditions can actually be traced back to the microbiome or deficits thereof. It's really likely that's probably another overestimate, but it's hard to know. Also, your microbiome is a lot of it's heritable. There's a heritability factor. Heritable. In other words, the first colonies you get from your parents, off of your mother, and so the environment you live in also helps play a role in which bacteria are in your gut. So things like life experiences, diet, exercise, where you live, the amount of stress in your life, all of that will change the numbers of bacteria, the numbers of different kinds of bacteria, things like that. There are two kind of theories of the gut biome and brain. One is the bottom-up theory, which says that the gut activity drives changes in the central nervous system function. And then you've got the top-down theory, which says the central nervous system drives changes in the GI function. The truth is it probably goes both ways. There's definitely probably, some things where what you eat or the amount of certain bacteria in your gut will lead to different changes in the central nervous system. And then, of course, things like stress or traumatic events could definitely lead to changes in your gut health as well. So there are, like we were talking about, there are definitely some bacterial influences. So bacteria have long been recognized to contribute extensively to the gut metabolism, especially carbohydrate metabolism. So bacteria just tends to be able to break down certain things differently than the human gut can. So it does help in metabolism. So gut microbiome also contributes to the immune system development. Obviously, the more you're exposed to, the more the body can prepare itself against. And then the microbiota also can affect the central nervous system function and behavior through, like I was saying, a number of bidirectional pathways. So this is where I was talking about that top down versus bottom up theories. And so here we're going to talk about it as a balance between the two. So collectively, this interaction between the microbiota and the central nervous system, we'll call this the gut-brain axis. So there's automatic afferent and efferent connections. So again, that's sending information and receiving information. There's peripheral immune functions. The HPA axis plays a role here. Remember, that's big in stress. And we did talk about how the HPA axis needs some of those, some molecules that we get from our diet. And then there's, of course, bacterial metabolites as well. So in germ-free animal studies, then what they do is they take mice and they raise them in aseptic conditions. In other words, they don't expose them to any bacteria, anything. They remove all bacteria from them, so they don't have any microbiome. They just have normal guts. And what we see is the connection between the gut biome and mood and behavior. So the germ-free mice have exaggerated HPA response to stress. So you see this exaggerated stress response. So stress responses are normalized following kind of implanting the mice with germs. So if we put bacteria back into their gut, say we give them an Activia, we actually see their mood stabilize again after getting some sort of gut biome. So this is really showing how the gut biome plays a big role in, one, the HPA axis, but also in mood, because we do see an effect on stress responses. And then, so bacterial replacement, this is switching bacteria between mice that have high anxiety and low anxiety. Actually a pretty kind of gross method. They pretty much take poop from the low anxiety mice and they kind of shove it up the butt of the high anxiety mice to get the bacteria in there. Not pretty, but it works. And what they see is that the behavior of the high anxiety mouse actually will lower to recreate the behavior of the low anxiety mice following this poop transfer. They call it bacterial replacement. It's a poop transfer. So that's pretty interesting. And then also the mice that were low anxiety, if you put the high anxiety mice poop in them, their anxiety will actually increase. So they'll become more anxious, just like the other mice. So it is a two-way street. Again, super interesting. Dude that came up with this idea, what was he thinking? I don't know. So microbiome plasticity to stress. So the developmental stress models show corresponding changes in the microbiome. In other words, maternal stress separation in rats can cause persistent changes in the gut microbiome. So this is kind of like trauma in young childhood can lead to changes in the gut microbiome for life. So this would be a good kind of comparison to perhaps why early life stresses in humans can create long-term effects. Of course, this is in mice, so we don't know. but then microbiome changes can correlate with development of exaggerated stress responses later on as well. And then stress responses are normalized by probiotic treatments. So perhaps, stressed people just need to eat some Activia. Apparently it helps. At least in these rats, which, rats don't have nearly as large of a microbiome as humans, so probably 2 Activia will do it. But also they would have to constantly be eating these probiotic treatments because you still will get this lifelong persistent changes in the gut microbiome over time due to the maternal separation stress early in life. So there is some human clinical evidence of this. So again, there's a significant comorbidity of depression in metabolic gastrointestinal disorders. So we've talked about diabetes before, but we also see it in obesity, IBS, Crohn's disease, other gastrointestinal disorders. You do see a high comorbidity with depression. So consistent evidence of increased gut permeability in GI disorders. So in other words, obese individuals have significant elevated levels of circulating LPS. So the relationship of diet and exercise to mood disorders is definitely seen here. So in other words, because they have gastrointestinal disorders, then they have altered microbiomes. They don't have the right type, the right number of each type of bacteria in their gut. So they're not able to create the ideal homeostasis, and this can lead to mood disorders. So again, there is definitely something between diet and exercise going on and mood. So you may have heard a lot, if you know anyone who is stressed or maybe depressed, a lot of people say, maybe it's what you're eating or go exercise. Exercise helps elevate mood. And there is something to that. It's obviously not going to be perfect, but there have been numerous observational studies that have identified associations between diet and the risk of MDD. So people with a healthy diet, then we have an odds ratio of 0.76 to 0.92. So an odds ratio is saying that those with a healthy diet will have a reduced risk of MDD by the difference to 100. So an odds ratio of 0.92 would mean that they have a reduced risk by 6%. So healthy diet, OR of 76, they would have a reduced risk by 24%. Okay, so that's how that's working. So a Mediterranean diet, which is different than a healthy diet, definitely has a lot more of those fatty acids. The omega-3s, we'll see an odds ratio of 0.54 to 0.86. That's actually better than just a healthy diet. And then we also see some, again, changes with just using omega-3s. Also some complex carbohydrates, increase the amount of fiber, things like that. And then recent studies have also shown early life sensitivity to diet in school-age children, which is predictive of later life risk of depression. So a better diet in school-age children has been shown to decrease the risk of depression later in life. But then again, that could potentially be a confound with, usually children that have access to a better diet are children that have that are in a higher social economic situation. And we know that that's another kind of correlate with depression is lower social economics and higher risk of depression. So perhaps something's going on there other than just diet. But then treatment trials are currently underway to improve childhood nutrition. And this is hoping to reduce the rates of depression specifically. So this should kind of show us how whether or not this theory of diet in childhood affects depression. So hopefully that works. I definitely hope children are getting a better school meal than I did. Ours were gross. And then, of course, there's the exercise part. So physical inactivity does increase the risk of depression. And this is possibly because exercise alters the microbiota. It changes the type and numbers of each type bacteria in the gut. Some trials show that exercise can be as effective as antidepressants in some groups. In these trials, it's usually patients with mild depression, not severe depression. In patients with severe depression, then exercise can help, but in conjunction with antidepressants. And then we've got the bimodal effect, so intense exercise, like endurance athletes, can actually increase the HPA axis activity and negatively affect the GI health and microbiome. So that is something we need to look into further as well. So some therapeutic options for our gut biome and mood. Current therapeutic options are being explored to modify this. So again, probiotics, obviously something more intense than just Activia, but perhaps that would work. Some dietary interventions, again, especially in childhood, trying to increase the diets, perhaps increasing the amount of omega-3s and fatty acids. And then there has been some work on fecal microbiota transplants, so that's those poop transplants I was talking about. They're actually starting to do that in humans. So they started this idea for gastrointestinal diseases, where they'll take a healthy person's gut biome via poop and somehow sterilize it without killing the bacteria, and they'll transplant it into an affected patient, and they actually do see some improvement. So there are some therapeutic options being explored to do this in terms of depression and mood disorders rather than just gastrointestinal disorders. So, like I said, present trials are really limited to GI disorders, but it is being looked into for psychological. So, some clinical work, there's prospective clinical trial of IBS patients. So this is a probiotic treatment of this bacteria, Bifidobacterium longum. And while it is a clinical trial for IBS, they are looking at mood disorders, so they do see a reduced depression score and reduced amygdala hyperactivity were correlated and associated with relief from IBS symptoms. So as the probiotic is working on helping the IBS symptoms, you're also seeing it helping in the depression scores as well. So that's pretty promising. So summary for this short section, just one video for this section. The gut microbiome has been shown to affect psychological state in both humans and animal models. So here we really focused on depression, but it has been shown in anxiety as well. The microbiome can communicate with the central nervous system through the gut-brain axis. And remember, that's both top-down and bottom-up through multiple pathways and systems. And then convergent effects of inflammation and stress response in the central nervous system has been shown. Current treatment options have been very effective in animal models And well, the treatment options are currently just being focused on for subjects with GI problems. There is some early clinical work and ideas in the running to start trying these treatments in humans. So that's it for the gut brain axis.